For the past 3 years, around this time at the end of the school year, my daughter and the other fourth grade math teacher have allowed me to come in and do coding with their students. We try to do some things that pull in different math topics, either that they have covered or that they'll see in the future, and just kind of have some fun with the coding. This year I was planning to do tessellations or tiling with them. So that's what this video is going to be. We're going to cover a couple of we're going to work through a few tessellations and just see what we can figure out. There's a lot more that you can do on your own. There's a lot of other people that can probably explain the topic and some of the math fundamentals behind it a lot better than me. We're just going to do some coding with it and get some exposure to it. When we code, I try to always start out the sessions with 2 quotes from Edison and encourage the students that, Edison tried lots of different things. Some of them worked, and we all benefit from that, and a lot of them didn't work. But he kept trying and kept trying and trying and trying. And the same way with coding. Keep trying, try something different, look up some things, try some things, ask for someone's opinion or to give you a second look. But with coding, you're not really going to hurt anything. Just keep trying and see what can happen. What you'll see in the videos, I'm going to edit out some things to keep the video shorter, but I will probably also make some mistakes. I usually do with the students each year, and we kind of figure out what went wrong, how do we fix it, and we move on. It's a good learning experience because everyone's going to make a mistake, and things aren't always going to work out right the first time, so you just keep trying. Before we start coding tessellations, let's look at a tool that the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics has out there for us, Tessellation Creator. We search for that, and we pull that up. Take just a minute to load. So think about tile, think about what shapes are in the tile. And we can use the creator to go through and explore some of those shapes and put stuff together. Okay, so we're not going to spend much time. That's just to show you, if you want to play around with tessellations or explore them a little bit more, there's one tool that you can use to do that, to kind of figure this out a little bit better, explore it a little bit more on your own. For the coding today, for our tessellations and tiling, we need images, kind of like what we saw in the NCTM Tessellation Creator. So I've created image files 3 through 8, so 3-sided through 8-sided images. Each of them should have 50 pixel sides on them, so they'll match up kind of like we saw in the Tessellation Creator. These are available either to download, there's a link at the bottom of the video, or you can use the link into Scratch that already has them loaded up. You can create them yourself if you'd like also, but the intent of having those for you is so that you don't have to spend time doing that. Now, let's look quickly at the SVG file. Basically, they're vector images, so we're just using text commands to tell it how to create the image. So these are very, very simple, but there's also some interesting math in with them. So for instance, the triangle, the 3-sided, we start 0, 0, then we're going to go over to 50, 0, and then we're going to go down and make the rest of the triangle. We use the rectangle command instead of the polygon for the 4-sided. We could have used the polygon also. 5-sided, there's our polygon and the points that we use. Now, one student wanted to learn the quadratic formula this year, and it was working on that. So anyone that knows quadratic formula, there's some neat math behind creating these SVG files if you want to do the math to create it. Also, really good site that has good web-based tutorials is W3 Schools. So if we go to SVG tutorial at W3 Schools and take the link, you will see ads on this site. That's how they sponsor it. But there's our polygon command. So we can go into the polygon command, and then if we scroll down, we'll see some examples, and they have a try it yourself, so you can play around with it in their try it editor. And we can change the point to 20 and run it and see how that works. So feel free to work on that, or maybe a different video in the future. There's some neat math behind this as well. Before we start coding, we're going to look at the diagram up on the screen here. As we move around and build our tessellations, do our tiling, it's helpful to know where we're moving around on the screen, how that works. Notice we have a grid. We have X going left and right, Y going up and down, and then we have numbers. Notice everything in the middle is 0x, 0y, and then to the right-hand side, the numbers get bigger. To the left-hand side, notice how we have negative numbers, and the bigger the negative number, the further away it is from from 0. Same way up and down with the y. And then I put points 100, 100 in each of the quadrants, just so we can kind of get an idea. In the upper right corner, we have 100, 100. In the lower left corner, we have negative 100 x and negative 100 y. So just keep that in mind as we're figuring out where to put our shapes once we get into the coding in Scratch. For the coding that we do today, we're going to use Scratch. In the address bar, you can see it is scratch.mit.edu. In the upper right corner, you'll see a sign-in button. So if you have an account, want to sign in, some have school accounts, some have personal accounts, that's an option. If you don't want to sign in, that's fine. When you sign in, that allows you to save your work in Scratch. You can come back later, you can show it to someone, you can share it with someone else. To start out with, for our first project, we're going to go to the link down at the below the video, and this is the shared Scratch project that has the shapes that are preloaded for you. So I'm going to click on the C inside. That's going to come up. If I click on costumes, you'll see the shapes, the triangle through the octagon, 3-sided through 8-sided figures. The first tiling or tessellation we're going to do is with a square. So we're going to select the square, then we're going to go back to our code. On the left-hand side, if you're new to Scratch, one of the helpful things is when you're trying to follow someone else's code or figure out where is something at, look at the color. So the color of each of the types of blocks will help you figure out where that block is stored and the type of block that it is. For the exercise that we do today, we're going to need the pen extension. So all the way at the bottom, lower left, you'll see Add Extensions. We're going to click on that. We're going to select Pen. And then notice below My Blocks, we have a new pen. And then we have some blocks related to that. Now, for this activity, what we want to do is we're going to take our square and we're going to tile the screen with our squares. So we could draw squares, but what we're going to use mostly this time today is the stamp block. So the way the stamp block works, when I run the stamp block, it makes a copy of the image at the location it's at. So I can stamp it there, move over beside it. I can stamp again. I can stamp again. I can go up above and stamp. Okay, so that's how the stamp block works. Now, the whole point of coding is to automate this. So what we want to figure out is how can I use code to run a row of blocks across the bottom of the screen. Now, as I move this around, notice our X value and our Y value. We looked at that a little bit before on the grid. X goes left to right, Y goes up and down. When we're up in here, both of them are positive numbers. When we're down in here, both of them are negative numbers. Okay, so X left to right, Y up and down. So what we're going to do is we can erase the screen with the erase all block. And when we start our code, under the events, we want some event to start our code. I like the space bar because I like to press the space bar. It's easy and quick. You may want to do the flag instead, or you may have another key that you want to select to start. Okay. When we first start our code, I want to erase the screen, so I'm starting over. Now I want to move the block down into here. So when I look at these numbers, that's close to -100, -200. So I'm going to go up into motion. And we have a block here that says go to, and it holds those values. I'm just going to change that a little bit to 100. Going to change this to -200. And then we will stamp. So if I press the space bar, it moves that block there, and then it stamps it. Okay. Now I want to repeat this and move across. So in the control block, I'm going to grab the repeat statement, and I'm going to start off with just a couple. I want to get the patterning right, and then I can change that number to whatever makes sense. So I'm going to repeat it just to start out with 3 times. I want to do 3 stamps. Now after I stamp, I need to move over. I know my block is of size 50 on all the sides around. So under motion, I've got an option to move. It starts out by saying 10 steps. I'm going to change that to moving 50 steps. Okay. And then we'll click that back in. We'll press the space bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh. If we look under looks, there's a couple blocks under here. One's called show, one's called hide. So it's stamped 3. The 4th one is the block that we have that we're moving around. So I can hide that block, and I can put that at the end, so it's just going to show those 3. And then notice also, I can trigger things with the space bar, or I can just click on blocks too. So if I want to see where that block is, I can just click on show and run it. Now, 3, if I look at this, I can do probably another 3, maybe a couple more. So let's do 7, and then let's see how that works. Okay, let's be adventuresome. We'll go out 10. Let's see what that does. Okay, 10 runs off the screen. So let's bring that back. We'll come back to 8. Okay, there's my 8 blocks across the bottom. Now let's go ahead and show. Our next step is we've got our 8 across. Now we want to start back at the beginning, and we want to go across. So in order to do that, we need to move our y value. And notice my y value is -150. So that makes sense. We'll move from, we were at -200, we're going to move up 50 steps to -150. So under motion, I have a couple ways I can do this. For this one, I'm going to use the change y by. Now, instead of changing it by 10, I want to change it by 50. Okay. So I want to change it up to here, and then I want to do a block there and stamp it in the block. I want to go up. So just like before, we'll pull out the control. We want to repeat this. Again, we'll do a low number 3 just to see if our patterning and code's working right. So we'll drop that in. Okay. And then let's just run that and see what happens. Okay. Well, notice we went across 8. We moved up 50, and then 50 again, 50 again. The problem is we're way over here for our x. We want to be back over here. And remember, x was -100 when we started. So we want to change y by 50. But then under our motion, we need to set our x value back to the beginning where we were the first time. So we're going to set x to, then we want to set that to -100. Okay, let's run that again. Okay, we'll put our hide back up on there. Okay, there's our 3. Now we can probably go another 3. So let's jump that up to 6. Okay, and now we've created our tessellation or our tiling of just a square. We went 8 across and 6 high. Now again, if this is something you want to keep, you can sign in, you can change the name and save it, or if this is all you want to do with it, you can just close out as Scratch. For our second project, we're just going to start and just do the create button when you first get to Scratch. We're going to start a new project. Notice we have the default image. We're going to go ahead and remove that down in the lower right corner. And then we're going to add a new one by uploading a sprite. I'm going to pick the triangle for this one. I could also, like in the first example, I could have went online and used the already loaded ones. Okay, there's my triangle. Now, for this one, we're going to take a triangle this direction, and we're going to take one that's rotated, and we're going to alternate between the two and make a pattern. So what I want to do is I want to duplicate this, and then I want to take the second one and I want to flip it vertically. So now it's this direction. And then I'm going to change the color. So you can change this to whatever color. If you don't like the color red, you can change that as well on the original image. I'm going to change this to a green, so I'll kind of have a Christmas color going on here. Now I'll use the fill bucket. We'll change that to green. So I've got a red image and a green image, and they're different directions. So let's go back to our code. If you don't already have the pen, you'll need to add that extension. Okay. We'll start out by using our starting event. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our images, and actually I think I want to start with the original image, so we'll switch back to that. Okay. So what we're going to do is, and we'll just kind of work through this a little bit. So we're going to stamp that one. Then we're going to move over a little bit. And what we want to do is switch to the other triangle. So the way we do that in code, under looks, we have a next costume. We can also use the switch costume, but for this we're just going to do the next costume. So this switches to the green triangle. Now I want to position that right next to it. I want to stamp that. Now I want to switch back to the red, move over a little bit, and we will stamp that, switch. Okay, so you've got the pattern. Now we need to put that into code. Okay, so we're stamping and we're doing the next costume, but also in between there, notice we did move. So let's go ahead while we're at it. We'll go up to our motion block, and we're going to want to move a few steps. Now, we didn't really figure that out yet, so we can look and say, okay, we're at -139. If we can break these apart, stamp that, and then we want to do pull that apart. We'll do next costume. So then we'll go over. Okay. And we didn't look at the Y value, or the X value, we looked at the Y. So let's stamp the red, we'll switch, that was 80, -80. We'll move over for the green, -54. So if we do the difference between -80 and 54, we've got about 26. So let's try. We can either do 25 or 26 steps, and let's see how that works. So we're stamping, moving 25 or 26 steps, then doing the next costume. So let's go to our control, and again, let's only repeat it. Yeah, we'll do like 5 times or so, just because we've got 2 shapes. We need to do a little bit of a pattern. Now, we'll also want to do the erase all. And let's see, we're starting out -100, -140, somewhere in there. So let's go up and let's set our starting position. So we always start out in the same spot each time. So we'll start it negative 200 on the X, and let's just even that up at negative 140. Okay, let's just see what that does for us. So that looks pretty good. So let's just extend that out. So 5. Let's see what 10 looks like. Okay, and we can, looks like we can go a few more than that as well. So let's go ahead and maybe do 15 and see where that takes us. Okay, and that looks pretty good. Now, do we want to end with the red or do we want to end with the green? Actually, like we did before, let's just come down to our looks. And we'll pull out the show so we can see it, but then we'll go ahead and hide the last one just so we can kind of, okay. So we started with the green, but see, so when we run this, notice we're getting different results. We start with the red, then we start with the green because we're doing a negative or an odd number. So it's switching each time. So what we might want to do, so our program always, we want our code to always work the same way all the time. So right at the beginning, let's go ahead and grab the switch costume 2. If you remember, our original shape was named 3. We could rename these shapes whatever. Our first one is called 3. Then the second one just named 2 for us. So there's red, there's red. So we're starting with red, we're ending with red. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and show. Now we need to figure out what are we going to do for the next row. Well, we definitely want to switch to green because we're going to put the green on top of the red so it alternates. So we started at negative 200, negative 140. Now we're, again, right around negative 200. But this time, on our second time around, we're up to negative 95. So we went from negative 140 to negative 95. So how many steps is that? 5. So that looks like about maybe 45 steps. So let's go ahead and we'll go back to our motion. And we want to go ahead and we want to set the X to the negative 200 like we did before. We'll see what that looks like. And then we're going to want to change Y by, I think we decided we're going to start out and try 45 because that kind of looks like about what it's doing. And then let's go ahead and repeat that, and we'll go, let's just go 4 high. So we'll take our repeat block and drop it in, and we'll bring our height up. And let's just see what that does for us. Okay, so notice we're starting to get our pattern, and again, just like before, we can do the, instead of 4, we can probably go maybe 8, maybe not. Let's see what that does. And again, we can probably calculate. 8's a little high, but let's. We can decide too. Do we want to end with an even number or an odd number? Normally, when you're tiling, you would have a shape at you would have a shape at the end, or if you're doing a real tile floor or something outside, you would either cut a piece partially to even that up. In this case, we just want to kind of get the pattern going. And again, there we start with the red. Now if we change that to 6, notice the difference of our start and end. Okay, so we'll end with the green pointing up. Okay, so that's our second example of how we can basically use 2 different shapes and create a pattern. Before we start the next coding activity, let's talk about variables briefly. Variables are very important and very, very helpful in coding. Variables are basically, think of them as a box. The box can hold one thing at a time. So in the example you see on the screen, our variable is named the left side, and it holds the value 175. If we want to replace that with something else, we can, but we can only store one thing at a time. So if we want to store something different than 175, we get rid of that, put the new thing in. You also see on the screen the block where we can set the variable name left side to 175. Now, after we've set our variable, we can use it in Scratch or in other programming languages. And you'll see an example there where we're going to set the X value on the screen to whatever the variable left side's holding. So we can retrieve that value and do something with it. In this example, this is a little bit different. So notice we're going to take the variable 175. That's currently what left side is. We're going to pull that out, and then we're going to take and subtract 50 from it. And then we're going to put that into the variable left side. So we're going to pull out the 175, take 50 off of it, put it back in as 125. And now left side is 125. Okay, for our third project, we're going to load up the six-sided figure, the hexagon. Okay, notice that for this one, I want a smaller image. So down here where we have the XY values, I can also change the size. So for instance, I can change this down to 40, and it makes it quite a bit smaller. Let's try. Let's go up to 50, see what that looks like. That's not bad. Now, for this activity, you just got a little bit of a tutorial about variables. We're going to use variables in here because what we want to do, we'll bring out our stamp and our erase all, and we'll just kind of look to see what we're doing. So this time, we're going to take this shape and see if you've seen something like this before. Okay, so if we do a pattern kind of like this, that one didn't stamp for us, so let's try that again. We'll stamp him. We'll put one up here just to kind of see the pattern. So what we want to do is we want to do kind of a staggered, so we're staggering these out, and that's going to give us kind of a honeycomb looking pattern. Okay, so this one will be kind of like the other ones, but we have to figure out how we're going to stagger this. So we're going to notice we have to start at different spots to make this work right. Okay, so that's going to be one of our challenges, and variables are going to help us out with that. Okay, so we'll go ahead and erase that. We'll go to our events, and we'll drag out our starting event. Okay. Okay, we can get kind of about where we want to start out. Okay, now I'm going to go down to the variables, and for this one, I'm going to need to, I'm going to want to keep track of where I should be starting each time. Okay, so if you remember in our example, we had a variable called left side. So let's just, we'll use that in our code. We'll just call our variable left side. And I could have made a new variable, or I can rename the variable that's out there. The checkbox lets us see what that value of the variable is. We can leave that out there, and later on, if we don't want it, we can turn that off. Okay. So we're going to start out by setting the left side to, yeah, we can start out setting it at, we'll go at a negative 200. That puts it pretty close to the side. Okay. And then we'll do our motion, and we'll go to, and we'll change that to, let's just change that to 150. Okay. And then this time, instead of putting the negative 200 in the go-to, I'm going to use the variable left side. Okay. Because left side, we can turn that back on. That's going to start out negative 200. Okay. And then I want to move this across, but I'm not really sure how far to move it across. So let's just put a couple out here. And then we have to stamp that, and then we'll put one right here. Okay, and that's going to be close. We may have to adjust it by a pixel or two. So that says negative 120. So we started at 200, and now we're over at negative 120. So we went about 80 steps there. Okay, so like we did before, let's go ahead and we'll repeat a few extra. We'll maybe go, let's go 5 across. Okay, and we'll do our usual. We're gonna stamp, and then we'll move. We decide we're gonna try 80 steps. Okay. Okay, and we forgot to put our erase all, so we'll just clip that guy in, and link that up, and then let's just run that. So, and then we'll go back to our looks like we have before. Pull out our show so we have that, and we'll hide it. Let's just run that one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's our first loop. Now, let's go ahead and show, and then now the next one we need to bring up, and this time instead of starting at negative 200, we're going to need to start at negative 160. Okay, so let's do our control again. We'll repeat, let's just do 2 times. Okay, and then we decided we're going to move to negative 160. So let's do our motion, and then we'll set X to negative 160. So let's see how that works. Okay, and we forgot to change our Y, of course, so let's show that. We lost our, not sure which one's our guy, so we'll just set that to 1. We'll show him. Okay, and we can put him here, and let's see, our Y started at negative 150. We're at 128 now, so the difference between negative 150 and 128 would be, it looks like about 22. So let's change Y by, and then we'll do 22. Okay, and let's run that again. And we decide that need to be a 2. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. We might be able to adjust the pixels a little bit to get rid of that. Okay, so let's run that up to 3 and let's see what happens. Okay, now notice the next time, and let's show and see if we can find. So the next time we want to go back to our left side being 200. So the first time we go through, we want negative 200, our left side. Then our left side should be, then our left side is going to be a negative 160. That's going to go back to 200. So we need to be able to change that back and forth between 160, negative 160, and negative 200. So there's a couple different ways we can do that. The way I think we'll do it this time is we're going to do an if statement. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to notice that we have to match things up. So yeah, you've got your shape there. So we want to do an if. And then here's what we want to check. So we'll bring this out. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to check the variable left side. we're going to see, does left side equal negative 200? Because if it does, then we want to change left side to negative 160. So to do that, we'll use our variable, and we'll say set left side to negative 160 if it was a negative 200. Now if it's not a negative 200, then we want to set it to be negative 200. Okay. And then what we're going to do, instead of setting x to negative 160, we're going to want to set x to left side. Okay. And then this block, we'll just pull these out and put it in here, because we want to check this first. If it's a 200, we're going to change it to 160. If it's not a negative 200, then we're going to change it back to negative 200. So we'll clip that in here. Okay, I'll drag that up so you can see that a little bit better. And we also have, we can zoom out and zoom in on our code too if we need to. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's run that again. Okay, so now we're moving correctly. Let's repeat that a few more times. We'll go 5 times. Okay, now we're looking a lot better. And we can jump that up. We can do probably 8, 9, maybe even, let's just go 10. See what that does for us. Okay. And then notice we've got our shape. Now, we have a little bit of a gap in. We had a little bit of a gap, and rather than have the recording try a bunch of things, I stopped the recording, played around with the numbers a little bit, and I'll just kind of report what we did. So we changed the move 80 to move 78. So we're moving 78 steps. And then also I changed the left side. Instead of negative 160, we're starting at negative 161. Then we're still changing by 22. I think what you'll see now, things are a little bit tighter. We have that gap removed that we had before. So again, with these, you just kind of have to play around with them a little bit once you get your pattern going, just to do the fine adjustments.